Greetings, and welcome to a reading of my new poem, The Literate Salon. Before we get started, I have to tell you about an act of gender revolt that took place in the mid-12th century in France. The events of this revolt are recorded in a satirical poem called The Council of Remiremont, which came out of an abbey full of nuns in Remiremont in the region of Lorraine. If you want to fast forward to my poem, I will type in the timestamp below. You see, I refer to Remiremont in my poem, and it is important that you know what happened there among a group of light-hearted and extremely sexually liberated nuns. Yes, nuns, sisters in holy orders. Now, first, just a couple of things about medieval nuns. Like everyone else in 12th century society, they were all young. Life expectancy in those days was 35 years old. So whatever living you wanted to do, you had to do it fast. Not all of the residents of these convents were religious. Convents is what they did with runaway girls, excessively flagrant prostitutes, pregnant unmarried teenagers, and, additionally, for nobles, daughters whom they could not marry off for whatever reason or whose sons got killed in crusades. Generally, they were literate. They had a good tradition of passing on the ability to read and write. They were cloistered, generally confined to the abbey premises, but they were autonomous. Their situation was completely and absolutely run by women to the extent they experienced government. It was a female government. They were fun-loving, good-humored. There's lots of evidence for this. You can see in this little cutout these three young girls in habits. The one on the left is engaged in rapturous prayer, and the one on the right is engaged in rapturous prayer. The one in the middle is not praying and is sticking her tongue out. Now, it should be observed that these women really had no disincentive to having sex. Not all took vows, such as vows of poverty and chastity. There was a category of nun called a canoness, and the canonesses were really just there to enjoy the girls' club. And vows or no vows, mortality rates were so high and life expectancy was so low that there was a Darwinian natural selection in favor of whatever kind of human reproduction could take place. And any babies just got thrown in with the rest of the orphans that the convents looked after, and, as the saying goes, it took a village to raise a child. And consider a teenage nun considering sneaking out for some fun. I mean, what's her downside? So I get pregnant. What are they going to do? Send me to a convent? I'm already in a convent. Now, it's in this context that I will be telling you about the nuns at Remiremont, who had a very great deal of sex with a very great many men. Now, you need to know that this was a very specialized and exclusive sort of abbey. Some of the abbeys, such as this one, were pretty well exclusively for the wealthy and the privileged, women and girls from very powerful families. They dressed in beautiful, rich-colored clothing, which no one else could afford, as you can see here. They lived opulently with many servants and paid entertainment and chefs and quality liquor. And importantly to this story, they engaged priests to come into the abbey and administer the sacraments. And sometimes that just got the young girls' hearts a-dancing. What could go wrong? I should point out also that these nuns were forced to bring these men into the convent because it had been a long time since women in the early church were permitted to be priests. Now, the richest and most opulent abbey in all of 12th century Europe was here at Remiremont. It was a small and extremely exclusive women's club. You had to prove 200 years of noble lineage just to be considered for admittance. It was so exclusive that the noble families of these nuns campaigned to have the abbey made exempt from episcopal oversight, that is, the annoying meddling of the local bishops. And they were successful. That is, the nuns of Remiremont became answerable only to the Pope himself. Now, the nuns of this particular sorority were crazy rich, very powerful, and they did not feel at all bound by the cloistered existence, often leaving for months at a time. What you're looking at here is the little abbey church at Remiremont, where these nuns prayed and sang. It is a very high quality structure, made of the very best materials. This thing is 1,000 years old, and I'd say it stood up pretty well. And just look at the inside of this, will you? I mean, this was an absolute Ritz-Carlton among medieval churches. And check out the Gothic vaulting. I mean, this church was completed in the late 11th century, making it contemporaneous with the construction of Durham Cathedral in England, which historically exhibited the first regular use of a ribbed, groined vault. But that's what this is, built at about the same time. So, I mean, this was cutting-edge technology when it was built. In other words, nothing was too good for these rich bitches. So this is a long lead up to a very short story, which is basically this. The nuns at Remiremont, in addition to earning a reputation for superb singing, also got laid by a lot of men from a wide variety of backgrounds. And all hell broke loose when they hired a clerk to copy and disseminate a poem they wrote. As I say, the poem is called The Council of Remiremont. Now, this wryly satirical narrative was written in Latin, and it told the story of a cheerful, funny debate conducted as a mock disputation among the nuns about who performed better in bed, clerks or knights. After some explicit ribaldry, the verdict went overwhelmingly in favor of the clerks, and there was harsh denunciation of the sexual roughness of knights. And the poem concludes with a solemn declaration of the one thing all these randy nuns could agree upon, with no debate, and that was that the very, very most satisfying lovers were priests, and persuasive evidence was led about that. I had occasion to translate the poem from Latin when I was in graduate school. It blew my mind. What was interesting to me is that the sexual proclivities of these nuns did not seem to be a problem for anyone. What was a problem was that they hired a clerk to copy out their poem and distribute multiple copies outside the abbey. I'm guessing he didn't charge for his services. It's not clear who made complaint about the poem, but we do know it was presented as an action item to this guy, Pope Eugene III. As I say, these nuns were only answerable to the Pope himself. Now, Pope Eugene III was a kind of Rodney Dangerfield among medieval popes. He got no respect. When his predecessor died, no one wanted the job. There was a big power grab underway in those days, you see, and the papacy was claiming more and more temporal power, and that made the position of Pope a dangerous one. So they gave the papacy to this poor schlub, who was extremely sweet-tempered and pious and well-intentioned, but also a total rube, a naive country bumpkin of the First Order who had no idea what he was doing. Now, one of his many problems was that in 1144, the Crusader state of Edessa fell to the Seljuk Turks. Eugene gallantly declared the Second Crusade, but nobody listened to this guy. Eventually, he got support from Louis VII, King of France, but the crusade ended up as one of the worst and most unsuccessful military campaigns of all time, lasting only 5 days and costing many lives, and which suffered the additional ignominy of sparking savage pogroms against the Jews living in the Rhine Valley. After the crusade, Louis VII and his famous wife, Eleanor of Aquitaine, pictured here, sailed back to France in separate ships because of Eleanor's continuing and open sexual liaison with her uncle, and maybe also because of her going into battle topless, like the mythical Amazon women. I guess it's hot in the Middle East. Poor old Pope Eugene, who was but a humble, ascetic Cistercian monk, then had to engage in some bizarre sex therapy with the royal couple, even personally supervising them to sleep in the same bed. Then this crazy thing about the nuns of Remiremont landed on his desk, and by this time, Pope Eugene III was having trouble taking anything seriously. He censured the nuns in 1151, telling them to leave off their, as he put it in Latin, carnales commutationes, meaning carnal exchanges. This was clever because it addressed both the screwing around and the exchanges of pornographic manuscripts. So, what's the point of all this about a bunch of slutty nuns? I mean, conceptually, it makes for ironic comedy. And if you want to come on strong at Halloween parties, there's that. Or if you just want to be provocative, this works fine. However, the idea of the virgin whore is, I suggest, part of the hidden history of women in the Christian West. In one aspect, there are 3 obvious feminist themes. 1, freedom. 2, empowerment. And 3, rebellion, and particularly rebellion to achieve freedom and empowerment. But there is another aspect, being an insight into the personality of the feminine divine. For this, I have to take you briefly to Egypt, on the west bank of the Nile River, not far from King Tut's tomb at Luxor, near the small modern town of Nag Hammadi. There, in 1945, just after World War II, a local farmer named Mohammed discovered in these cliffs near the river a collection of 13 codices, that is, ancient books made out of papyrus. They are today called Gnostic scriptures, but not because there ever was a religious group called Gnostics. These were self-described secret Christian texts purporting to contain secret knowledge of spiritual truths of limited circulation, much of which was communicated secretly to Mary Magdalene, who was repeatedly stated to be Jesus' preferred disciple. The word Gnostic comes from the Greek gnosis, meaning knowledge. And we have in English the expression being in the know to describe being privy to secret knowledge. Before these writings were found, we only knew of Gnostic scriptures because of attacks leveled at them. Particularly, at the end of the 2nd century, a French bishop named Irenaeus got wind of the existence of these texts and got his knickers in so profound a twist that he invented the word heresy. And the very first application of that word in history was his pinning it on the Egyptian Gnostics, who, as I say, actually didn't really even exist. But it didn't matter, since there was nothing Irenaeus could do. This was before the sword of Constantine, and formal Christianity was then more like the Pirate's Code, more of a guideline. The experts who examined these ancient texts are called philologists, and they tell us that these scriptures are 4th century copies of 2nd century manuscripts, which were preserved by Egyptian monks after their local bishop gave them strict orders to destroy them. When Christianity took over Rome in the 4th century, it became illegal to own such texts, and the word went out to burn them. Obviously, the monks didn't destroy these particular texts and hid them in the cliffs. Now, within this half shelf full of books, one finds a 5-page cosmic riff, I'll call it, handwritten by an apparent female divinity, an unnamed goddess, who declares herself simultaneously to be a wide variety of persons and their opposites at the same time. This supernatural manifesto is called The Thunder, Perfect Mind. And when this got dug up, no one had seen anything like this before. Now, here are some of those oppositions. I am the honored one and the scorned one. I am the whore and the holy one. I am the wife and the virgin. I am the mother of my father and the sister of my husband, and he is my offspring. Now, philologists have given up on guessing, really, what are the origins and sources and historical context of this document. Some people suggest an affiliation with the Egyptian goddess Isis. Or is this holy wisdom talking, following the Greek idea and goddess called Sophia, adapted as the Logos or as a member of the Holy Trinity, Who knows? I should mention in this context that there is a similar line of inquiry in Judaism concerning the female divine personality. They come at it a bit differently, but I thought I should at least make a note of that. But let's just have another look at the text of this document. But I am she who exists in all fears, and strength in trembling. I am she who is weak, and I am well in a pleasant place. I am senseless, and I am wise. I am the name of the sound, and the sound of the name. Well, okay, goddess, whatever you say. Anyway, look, when my poem refers to Remiremont, now you won't have to Google it. And so, here we go. Three women with three strap-ons maintained their social gravity, despite what always happens when defining silk depravity, achieving, never napping, that liquid goal, that cavity. In erotic fever dreams they tossed, this trio said to fuck the cost, with disregard for shame or loss, with names libidinous, lascivious, and debauched. They got enough and plenty crossed. They had vibrating friends embossed, with all of them prostrate on sauce. But over that their bio glossed, libidinous, lascivious, and debauched. With such a rep for getting railed, more love than one can make, their lives got filmed in close detail in one continuous take. The punchy edits tell the tale. They never took a break. All limits of discretion torched, they fingered that small Gothic arch. For splooge and booze they were quite parched. They asked their gingham thongs be starched. Libidinous, lascivious, and debauched. One was classical and grand, sandbagger by trade. The next was full-on charlatan. She shook what she displayed. The playful third could only plan to play the horny maid. They met, comparing snatches, Venus Mons of Remiremont, slutty nuns with broken latches, and each other to cheer on, doing priests as pious practice, whose cocks were transformants. Stretching tight their leotards, playing fast like common bitches, singing like three drunken bards, dropping balms on itches. They seemed too cute to cheat at cards, and that way gathered riches. They always thrilled and dressed to kill when crashing high-end bashes. They made all the hallways fill neck-deep in frothy splashes. Their storming surges splayed and spilled where all restraining crashes. They never drank a little scotch. They liked to see correctness scotched. They liked to do it being watched. They made such waves all three got tossed, libidinous, lascivious, and debauched. So senseless with sensation, they ate appetites for food, drank steam, not condensation, knew nothing but was lewd, yet skirted degradation, only flirting with the crude. They terrified both towns and farms with indiscreet perversions. Some never would recover from their frankly nude conversions. Others dodged the wave of harm, but not their soul's subversion. They fastened on modalities, syncretic pleasures too. They bedded tall realities, not any stud would do. They moaned with clear pluralities, called many, but chose few. Their see-through garments touted. Their intentions were quite plain. They knew it, never doubted, found it easy to explain. They did not care what rules were flouted, nor what might leave a stain. They auctioned blushing decency. Cold hustling was their game. They hosted talks on piracy and hawked a cut of blames. They brought, for breach of privacy, the mother of all claims. In sex, the three took turns who bossed. They glowed with heat and melted frost. They softened virgin permafrost. They fought who had the smoothest crotch. Libidinous, lascivious, and debauched. Libidinous took on her mates. She labeled them bourgeois, at ease with many unknown fates, self-serving with their laws, while one time having noble place, but stripped of it for cause. Lascivious and debauched fought back. They were living in real time. They both knew how to talk hard smack. They hadn't left their prime. They showed their sister how to stack the profits of her crime. With that, she canned her sorcerer for messing up a stunt. She got naked with a barterer, placating her up front. Nothing could disorder her. A cult formed round her cunt. She called out all impostors, though she, by far, was worst. She claimed that it had cost her to claim a piece of first, to challenge her who crossed her and stole candy from her purse. Lascivious won the lottery, though never bought a ticket. Her beauty was all watery, a vision from a spigot. Wet, like brimming pottery, smashed behind a thicket. One Thursday, feeling luscious, she rented slaves to fix her. She dabbed their dusted blushes with upper thigh elixir. A silent gash is precious, for no one talks that licks her. She came across as innocent, supermodeling her modesty. She tempered her intelligence with cooing lust and honesty. When done, she hopped the freaking fence and recommenced the travesty. She volunteered to destine all in her command to randiest suggestions for womanhood unmanned. yelling yes to sexy questions and no to each demand. No drastic tale debauched could spill drained all desires empty. She winked that she was not fulfilled, and that caused problems plenty. Especially when, with waning chill, she said call back in 20. She sermonized from Ovid. She made no chaste pretense. She got strangers to be stupid with her on a public bench. And oh, she sighed like Cupid and came like Shakespeare's wench. She snapped fingers in auditions. She fisted every prize, exuding her great mission to do more than oxidize. A carbon fiber apparition held up with spit and lies. Debauch played roles, both true and phony, as stripper, sober, gay, screwing stallions and sweet ponies, both improv and a play. The run is one night only. She said to come today. The Gen Pop rumors wouldn't stop that there would be parades. Her play proceeded without props. Her words were cheap charades. She whipped them out like riding crops at private masquerades. Debauch suggested healthy fun. This stuff'll get you fried. You'll feel the Casablancan sun, the threads of schemes that died on looms, where curtain clouds are spun and routines mummified. She let them think she'd banged the lot. The hopeful fell about in heaps. They missed their only shot. Deflecting praise from counting sheep, she remembered she forgot, she dreamed she fell asleep. Lascivious said, let's fall in love. For once, keep on our pants. Let's ink the twinkling skies above with tinctures of romance. Let us be the ruin of a heart that takes a chance. They hit upon a troubadour. They loved his minstrel ways and how his grooves and pompadour had paganized their days, and how he learned of all their lure, but never turned away. He was a pygmy minstrel. They couldn't tell what tribe. Though never deferential, he couldn't unsubscribe. He was only circumstantial and open to a bribe. They trained their dog to like him. He taught its ball to play. He queried with a saucy grin if they'd been dead that day. He made their bishop spill her gin. He told that chick to pray. They practiced on him dalliance, enticement, and sly greetings. He was their only audience. Rehearsal time was fleeting. He pushed PR for ambience, but couldn't get a meeting. They jacked him off, no big surprise, and brought in disco fans. 12 women knelt amid their thighs. He checked the men, askance, his senses sodomized by size, by sweat and heat of dance. They cussed he was no savior. They must deserve much more. Some pixie dust with flavor, a most trustworthy cure for thrusts of their behavior and their lusts forevermore. The troubadour knew not the hour for revocation of paroles. He did not know the superpower they either found or stole. It came like rain, a sudden shower of low-tech crowd control. He saw the three were having doubts. He thought he better now explain the ins of all his outs. I have the cure for all your pains. Let me cast thine imperfections out. They strung him up in chains. Playfulness got quickly dire as they became less sweet. They riddled him with friendly fire, cremation at low heat. He made no rain as they required. They tickled both his feet. He wrestled free and drifted off as far as time would let him. Libidinous told the fair debauched, "It's your turn to go get him." No way. He may now be naught but so real gone. Forget him. Soon, he said, don't end me, please. I come back here as friends. Your greatness breaks above your knees, he pitched inside to them. But for such crimes of subtlety, no one makes amends. He told them stop their teasing and the falseness of their starts. His parting words came easy. Give up your acting parts and never love a species. They'll only break your hearts. His tats all said, his star got crossed. He dined on crow and albatross. He never let them shave his moss. Libidinous, lascivious, and debauched. When carnal plans were sputtering on yearning summer eves, they painted colored flutterings of petals, wings, and leaves. They fenced their crafted utterings to inattentive thieves. They were partners, lovers, buds, on that forever road, holding hands to wade the floods, squeezing shoulders as they strode. They were sisters of the fembot blood, fooling censors with a code. Thus, the fables of these queens deployed no quests. The impact of the joys that lay between their breasts could no more be attractive. Thus, they swapped their time machine for something interactive. The cops had tips, but none got caught. Not libidinous, lascivious, nor debauched.